Hi, my name is Chris Adair, and welcome to my first YouTube video posting. Today I'll be talking about the IBM GUI Debugger. I call this Revisited. I actually presented this at a users group meeting about 15 years ago, and recently decided to dust it off, post it online, and hopefully someone can benefit. I do have a lot of slides to get through, so let's get started. Here are the supported IBM releases. As you can see, it goes back to V5R3. And I expect it to be in the next two releases yet to be announced. Here are our supported languages. We have our native RPG, COBOL, and CL. Here are the debug scenarios. We can submit and debug a program in batch. We can debug an existing job in the system, or we can use the start debug from the green screen. Here are some of the advantages. We have run the cursor. We can monitor and watch several fields at a time, multiple breakpoint groups. Best of all, this is free with IBM. If you have an IBM you already have this. We just need to get it configured. This is the Debug Hub job. This is a TCP/IP server, star DBG, very similar to star admin. If you configure this to start when IP starts, then you'll never have to worry with this again. Here is the Debug Hub in the Navigator for iView. And here's the QTest Debug Server job. The Debug Hub kicks off a debug server job for every active debug session you have. The client setup. This is a Java program. We need 3 jar files. Typically what I do is I make a folder, debugger, and put it in my C drive. And I put jhall.jar, jt400.jar, and test.jar in this folder. Your test.jar and your jt400.jar are both in this IFS file path. Your jhall.jar is going to be a download from the internet. This is a Java help file. It is not required, so if you cannot find it, you can email me and I will get you a copy that I have, but it's not necessary to run. Anyway, once you have the jar files in your debugger folder, you'll need to change your environment variables. You'll need to set a class path to each of the files. Here I've got my class path set, and I've specified each file, separated by a colon. And anytime you change your class path, you need to reboot. And here's a Windows 10 version. I recently upgraded to Windows 10 and it still works perfectly. Here's how you launch the debug manager. Here's the command java utilities.debugmanager. This is very case sensitive. Typically what I do is I put the command in a bat file and put the bat file on my desktop for quick access. There's a Java gotcha. Your client and the IBM must be on the same Java levels. At one time I was running a backdated IBM running 6.1 and I had Java 5. My client had Java 7, so I had to go on the internet and find a Java 5 runtime, download it, install it, and then change my bat file to launch Java 5 when my debugger starts. Once I got my clients updated, or my IBM updated to the current Java release, I simply went in and commented this out. So hopefully you will not have to do this, but just in case, if you are running different levels of Java, here's a sample. So here's the debug manager. This icon up here will let you add a system. You specify your IP address or system name, and then obviously your user and password. Here I've added 2 systems. One's production and one's development. An alternative to the client setup is if you're running Access Client Solutions and have access to Run SQL scripts, there's a Run pull-down menu, and at the bottom option is System Debugger. This will launch the System Debugger, not the Debug Manager, but the System Debugger, and allow you to do the GUI debugging. Here's a sample here. Here's the Run pull-down menu and the System Debugger. But for now, we're going to look at the Debug Manager and start a debug session. Here I'm going to submit and debug in batch. I specify my program and library. I'm giving it the required parameters, and I'm even given a initialization command to change my library list or etc. Here's the source of my program. Your programs will need to be compiled with star source or star source debug. You simply take your cursor and click on the left side of your line numbers, and it will drop breakpoints. And the highlighted yellow line will be at the breakpoint we specified. I've expanded this to you so you can see easier, but you can have an eval, and here I've evaled &stm, which is my CL variable, and I can see that my &stm holds my SQL statement. You can mouse over different variables and see their values. You can do a right click and specify breakpoint properties. Certain conditions, if you wanted to see only a value when a given date or a given customer, etc. And as you can see, we stopped and I had my condition set to breakpoint here if the date was, this is a Julian date of 14/181. This is my favorite, and this is what I typically do the most, is I will put my job queue on hold, and I will submit my job, whether it's a menu option or the submit job command. And then I'll come in and launch the debug manager. I'll specify debug an existing job in the system and give it my program name and library. Then I'll go to browse. And here are all my jobs, and obviously here's the job that I just submitted. And I OK. It's going to ask me to release the job from job queue. And if you'll notice, this program here happened to have 3 modules. All 3 modules are listed. You can debug an interactive job on the system. Here I've specified my program name and library. I'm going to go browse. Here I'm picking one of my interactive 5250 sessions, specifying my breakpoints. Take my menu option, and there's my breakpoint. You can start debug from an emulation session. If you're running the debug manager, a start debug will launch the debug manager. And there are my breakpoints. Call my program. Here's one of my other favorites is when I get the message waiting on an active job. I simply do what everyone else does, look at the message, and the next thing I do is look at who compiled it last. Well, happens to be me. So what I do is I do a start debug, specify the program with the message wait. I go to my browse, find the program. It will take me directly to the statement that's an error, and I can easily see that I had an array index that's at 0. I've even used this to debug RPG CGI jobs running Apache. Simply type in your CGI program name and library. You need to pick the HTTP job, set a breakpoint, launch my browser, specify some data, and I'm at my breakpoint. Here's the toolbars. We have your typical step line by line. We have run to cursor, skipping breakpoints, simply run to cursor, multiple options here, monitor and set breakpoint. Here's the condition of breakpoint we saw in a few slides ago. Here's the monitors. You can highlight a field, click the eyeglasses, and bring up your field. Click OK, and the little box on the left-hand corner pops up. If you click the watch, it'll set the breakpoint whenever that value changes. And again, here you can have multiple fields listed here. You can see the values as you step through the program. You'll see the values change. This is the Locals tab. The ILE programs will show you all your fields your program uses and their values. Breakpoint groups. I use this frequently for large ERP programs. From the menu, pull down menu, you want to go to breakpoints. I'm going to have a breakpoint group called errors. I'm going to give it the color of blue. I'm going to go through my program, and any time the error is set on, I want a breakpoint. I've added several more breakpoints here. And I can enable and disable the breakpoint groups. So here, the green breakpoint group is disabled as it is outlined and not filled. So here my breakpoint is on the blue, which is my errors, and the errors got turned on. And once you've done all that work, setting all those breakpoints and breakpoint groups, every time you get in that program, you do not want to have to reset all those breakpoints. So you can save the environment. So here I simply do a save as, and I specify a name, and the next time I open that up, I will not have to set all my breakpoints again. Here's some helpful tips. Watch out for your Java versions. Be sure to get the latest jars. Pull those from your IFS. If you do have problems with the JHAL, you can shoot me an email and I will give you a copy of what I have. Look at your job logs if you have any problems. And obviously there's the IBM support line. And here are a couple of references. And again, email if you have any questions, and I'll be happy to help you out. Thanks for your time.